We love bringing education innovators onto this show because choosing our kids' school is one of the most important choices we make as parents. Mike Yates told us why school sucks. Michael Strong told us why normal lecturous teaching is fundamentally rude. Both made compelling arguments drawn on personal experience and lots of research into why traditional public school as a model simply doesn't serve most kids. And actually, most parents agree about this. When parents were polled by PDK, a research organization who's tracked American opinions about public schools since 1969, the majority gave our traditional school system a C or a C-, not a very good grade. And that's in 2018, before COVID policy set the whole system on fire. So what should we as dads and parents do about this? I know what my wife and I did. We tried several alternative schools, from Catholic to Waldorf to Montessori, and we ultimately landed on a school founded by today's guest. Laura Sandifer started one of the most radical, innovative, and fastest growing school systems in the country. It's called Acton Academy, and as of 2022, there are over 300 Actons around the world. There's 12 Actons here in Austin alone. Laura recounts Acton's origin story and the school's radically student-directed approach in her book, Courage to Grow.
We knew they wouldn't need to be test takers and listeners. We knew they were going to have to be problem solvers and doers, and that's what we just set out to create.
Laura has a master's in education, but her main inspiration came from unlikely sources, including her 3 school-aged children. With the help of them and her husband, Jeff, she's built an innovative school that requires less overhead than perhaps any model ever conceived. This is because the kids run the show. A typical K-12 Acton campus with over 100 students is managed by as few as 3 adults total. And their job is very different from your typical teacher.
So any adult that's in the room, we have a lever of control that you are not allowed to give lectures, you are not allowed to answer questions, or basically you'll be fired, because we really want to push that envelope.
I wasn't kidding when I said Acton was radical. Luckily for us, Laura was more than happy to answer my questions about Acton Academy in this conversation. So enjoy. Laura Sandifer, welcome to Dad Saves America.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
This is so special for me because Mateo goes to the school that you created. I love what you've done, and I love the school. Start me off at the origin point for you.
Well, first of all, we never imagined creating a school. We did not set out to create a school. We were living a very ordinary life. We were at the point with our sons that they were going to have to transition out of Montessori school. We weren't in a rush, but we just knew that was coming. Their school didn't go up through elementary. And this teacher said to Jeff, well, transition them to traditional school as soon as possible, because the more time they have being free, the harder it is going to be for them to sit at a desk all day and be talked to for 8 hours by a teacher. And Jeff said, well, I wouldn't blame them for hating that. And the teacher looked down for a long time and said, I wouldn't blame them either. And that's when Jeff whirled around, came home and said, we're not doing that. Our sons are not going to be chained to a desk in order to learn. And we said, let's just play. Let's rip up the script of school and create something that would be our dream school.
What were the tools that you had at that moment that were telling you that we need to follow our gut here? I know you have a degree in education, and I know that Jeff was a teacher at that time. Was that what made it seem like a step you could take?
We've been dabbling in ideas for a while, and we very often talked about what makes learning happen. And it came down to 3 essential tools, I guess, or ideas that we knew worked. First of all was the Socratic method. We were asking questions, not giving answers, so that our children, at that point it was just our children, 2 boys, where they're learning have to find the answers for themselves. They have to think on their feet. The learning philosophy that we use is that clear thinking leads to good decisions lead to good habits lead to your character, and character leads to your destiny.
Maybe that sounds obvious, but why is that true?
We believed that what our children's life would be an accumulation of their choices, their decisions. So being able to be a good decision maker, that's the first thing we care about. And that's still, today, what I care about. is my children being able to make good choices and to be faced with a lot of choices often. So choices and consequences. But you have to think clearly to understand what's the decision I'm making.
What is a good choice?
A good choice leads you further down a path that is a good path for you. Let's say you wanted to learn to ride a bike. You decide to start in the middle of the street or on the sidewalk. That seems really basic, but it's kind of a big decision when you're learning to ride a bike. So you weigh the pros and cons and you make a choice. The sidewalk had a bunch of bumps and dips and grooves. The street was a very closed street. My son chose to ride in the street. That was a decision that helped him a lot. You talk through that decision, pretty soon he's learning to think through clearly what the options are, weigh pros and cons, and then make a decision and live with the consequence. Not every decision is going to be great, but you learn to live with the consequence. The idea is that each decision is a process that you take intentionally. And your day is filled with a million little decisions, and they end up adding to what your life is. So your decisions become your habits. That's the next thing. So pretty soon, you're developing a lifestyle based on your decisions. So those are your habits. Your habits ultimately then become your character. Are you telling the truth a lot? Are you doing things that you're scared about doing, but you're doing them anyway, so you're becoming more and more courageous? Are you getting back up every time you fail, so you're becoming more and more resilient? And those character traits end up deciding your destiny. So from the very basic things, we were talking through decisions when they were 2 years old. Like, Sam, would you like milk or orange juice? And he would rebel against, he wouldn't want either. And so it's a really interesting thing. You can talk about decision making with really young children. So we started with that template, and we knew the Socratic method, back to the tool we were using.
And explain what the Socratic method
Yeah.
is. We have had other guests on the show talk us through the Socratic method, but how do you understand what that means? What does that
For
mean?
us, the Socratic method is offering choices, asking a question. It's not an open-ended question for us. I think that's a misunderstanding some people have, that it's just asking questions is the Socratic method. To us, it's a very skilled discipline of not having an agenda when you ask a question, creating a scenario, a situation, a moral dilemma, for example, and giving options as answers. The reason we give options so that it really zones in the listener's thinking. So if you want to, rather than an open-ended question where you kind of start daydreaming, going off into your own world, if you have to think of the choices, the options that are given, you're really listening hard and it's concrete. We then either have them define, if there's a question about a term, go back and define a term. So everyone's clearly talking about the same words.
Yep.
And then you have to take a stand. You can't say, well, I wouldn't want to do A or B. I do really kind of want to do C. Kind of like Sam was doing with the milk and orange juice. No, it's milk or orange juice.
That's it.
But these moral dilemmas, so it's really hard because you have to really take a stand and then say why, give evidence for why you took that stand. Then the next person can respond. And in our Socratic dialogues, the facilitator just sets that up, and the young people end up calling on each other. So they're listening to each other, responding to each other, and they have to either say, I agree or I disagree with John, with the person who just spoke, and why. So pretty soon it just becomes responding to each other, but you have to give evidence. The facilitator has a really important job. If the energy starts to lag, they force a question that deepens the scenario, turns up the heat, or calls for a vote and see who's where, and then keeps the question going. So it gets deeper and deeper, but everyone's having to take a stand. So it's not talking about knowledge necessarily. It's not debating facts. It's really taking a stand on a situation. Very often they're moral dilemmas, but that's what history is made of. So we knew that the Socratic method is what we wanted to ground everything on. So we don't have teachers. We decided we only wanted guides. So any adult that's in the room, we have a lever of control that you are not allowed to give lectures. You are not allowed to answer questions, or basically you'll be fired, because we really want to push that envelope. We want to push it further than any model I've ever seen, really. So that was where we started, was the Socratic method.
So when I explain Matteo's school, in fact, we always ask him to explain his school to anytime we have dinner guests over and they aren't familiar with Acton. The thing that always is striking to me is this hard rule of adults on campus are not allowed to answer questions. It's so radical. And you had that from the beginning. right from the start, you were like, no question answering by the guides.
That's right. And it's the idea
Wow.
is pushing power to children. We have a radical trust in children that underlies everything we talk about. We believe every single child is a genius. So these beliefs came before the tools we wanted to use. We trust children. We believe each one has genius within, that unique potential. And we think adults screw things up. So we wanted to create a scenario where the power structure is flipped. Traditional schools, it's, do as I say, listen to me, all eyes on me.
Yes.
It's completely reversed. We would like the adults to disappear in an Acton studio. Now, of course, safety protocols and all of that is in place. But what we find is so fascinating. And Maria Montessori was the other hero we pulled from. Besides Socrates, it was Maria Montessori. And part of her science, she was a physician, and she observed children learning, that mixed ages of children who are together where there's strict boundaries, but they get to make choices within those boundaries, sets them free to learn and to really take charge of their learning. So we grabbed onto Maria Montessori's philosophy also with those two key things.
One shorthand description you could make of Acton is it's a kind of radical Montessori that continues all the way through high school. It's not a perfect description, but so it seems like you did draw on Maria Montessori quite a bit.
We did, absolutely. And also the idea, another part of her philosophy that I love so much is how you set up the environment is key to everything. And I did this a lot as a mom also. So you want everything where the child can be free to solve their own problems. So cups are at their level, the brooms are this big so they can clean up their messes. It's not a child-proofed house. It's a child-accessible house for them to take charge of getting things done. Children want to do stuff. They want to solve problems. They want to work. They love that. So setting up the environment where everything a child needs is available. It's on the schedule's on the wall. The cleaning supplies are here. Your supplies for math, reading, and writing are here, and you're free to just figure it out. The other thing that I think is really important about Acton that differentiates the model, besides Socrates, Maria Montessori, but it's the overarching narrative of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
So that was something that we decided was really important. We wanted young people to basically have this narrative that would drive their individual lives, but also their life as a community, and it binds everything together. So Joseph Campbell was the great mind who put this idea together that there's this monomyth that all great stories follow. And you'll recognize it when you know it, that, Disney uses it. George Lucas was brilliant at this. All the great fairy tales. But it's that an ordinary person accepts a call to adventure. And usually there's a hesitation. Like they say, no, I don't want to do that. It's more comfortable in my ordinary world. But then someone tips that, a mentor or a guide. In our story, it was that teacher who's told Jeff, I wouldn't want to sit at a desk all day either. That was our call to adventure. That was a kind of a guide moment where you step into then your magical world, a different world. The whole journey is about discovering treasure, the treasure within yourself, to then return with something to share. And the treasure really is, for the Acton individual students, their inner gifts that they then want to use in the world to solve a problem. So heroes' stories, guides and mentors, the idea that they're on this journey is very tangible for 6-year-olds. They really want to be out there fighting monsters, and there's monsters on the journey. So we're really talking about the monsters of the journey all the time, and those monsters really are monsters within. It's monsters of distraction, the monster of victimhood, the monster of resistance. So these young people are learning how to battle those inner monsters in order to find their own genius and do something for the world. And that drives everything. Everything else really is just a tool or a process that helps that happen. Each hero on a journey really setting out to change the world.
I was reading about a statistic that was about, there's this notion of curiosity you had mentioned, being curious. And a sign of curiosity is how many questions you ask. And I'd read that over time in traditional school, the number of questions that kids ask in general at home, at school, over the course of their day collapses. So they start off, they're constantly, why, how, what, why? And then over time of being lectured at all day long, they just stop asking questions.
To me, that's the most heartbreaking thing. And that was what we were battling against. The idea that our children would stop being curious, I think is disastrous. I think it's disastrous for society to have people walking around not asking questions. So that's what our motivation really, really was, to keep the love of learning alive, to keep that curiosity alive. And you would think that if you're not answering their questions, they would get sick of coming to you asking questions because they're not getting anything from you. And the truth is that's exactly right. They're like, oh, forget it. We don't need to talk to him. He's not going to help us anyway. Let's go figure it out on our own. And they go run off and they find their answers. And then that leads to a deeper question. So the questions just continue, right? We have a wall of questions at Acton. When you have a question, if something you're really curious about, put it on the wall, and at some point, someone will figure out the answer to it. But the idea is really thinking that questions are sacred. I think I've told you the story of my father. He was still is one of my major heroes in life, and a real driving force behind Acton Academy. Just his philosophy. He's a Renaissance man, a minister, and his life advice to me simply was the two words, be curious. Be curious, and that's going to give you a good life. So that really is our motivation. Now, as the model, so you start with those young people, hands-on projects, learning on their laptops, these adaptive programs. As they start to get older, the big piece of the puzzle we wanted to inject was apprenticeships. So another one of our heroes, so we have Socrates, Maria Montessori, but then Thomas Jefferson comes in. And the idea that learning by doing, working at the knee of a master, is better than any other way of learning. So starting in middle school, each year, middle school through high school, our young people are out finding apprenticeships in the world in industries that they're interested in, but they're given tools, processes, templates for how to write an email that will get answered, how to do a phone call that will get you the interview, then how to do the interview, how to show up, and then learn from your mentor. So we've had students do everything from work in a bakery, work at SpaceX, work with architects, design firms. They're really exploring what they want to do in the world. And getting out into the real world was the other piece of the puzzle. Life is school, being out in the world. So we wanted to open up the studios. And so starting, when they're 11, 12 years old is when that starts happening. And that's when things really start to become very powerful in the learning, because then they're learning because they need to, they want to get that job. And that changes everything.
One of the things that I think has informed the way I try to think about these issues and the way I've thought about them for Matteo is that it's informed by the fact that I like to learn. And, I made these economics rap videos as a moonlighting project while I was at Spike TV, and I didn't have an economics degree, so I had to teach myself economics, and it was all driven out of my own interest in the subject. And so the thing that's so weird to me is that we go through our whole lives learning, and that process, day after day for most of our life, isn't the process that traditional school uses. It's like this other process. And that's really kind of strange because, why should an 18-year-old or a 14-year-old be in a completely different kind of environment than the one they're going to have the rest of their lives?
Yeah.
How did you know that what these basic principles you were applying were going to generate learning?
What we knew we wanted to include was simply learning how to learn. If you know you can learn anything and you have the tools and processes to learn anything, think how freeing that is for the rest of your life. You don't forget that. So learning how to learn, that's fundamental. That starts from day one. Learning how to do, so learning skills. And as they start to get older, the mentality is, I want to be really, really good at this one thing. So learning to really master a skill. So by the time they leave Acton, they're really, really good at one skill, something they love. And then learning how to be. We wanted to have a scenario where they learn how to be a human, how to be in relationship, how to be with themselves. So one thing that's really, really important is we knew that a small community was necessary. We would never do, for example, an online school because what we knew is humans bumping around each other all day long, getting in conflicts, all the stuff that's messy about being human, we wanted for our children. So that mixed age classroom, children teaching each other, the adults stepping way back, that's the learning to be stuff. And that's what we also wanted to do. So we have heard the compliment from the Acton students who have applied to college, and it makes me so excited because I never thought this would be the 21st century skill that that would rise to the top, that makes Acton students shine, is they're teachable. They're teachable. They want to learn, they know how to learn, and they seek learning out. And it really draws people to them out in the world. Like, it's so much fun to be around curious learners. When you have a growth mindset, when you know you can learn anything, you might just have to work really hard at it. That also is very transformative. If you have a fixed mindset, you think you're good at some things and bad at other things, and you don't even try the things you're bad at because failure is bad. With a growth mindset, you know that failure is absolutely necessary if you're going to get better at something. Those are the kinds of things that implant this idea that I can learn anything, I can learn how to learn, and then I can do big things and I can solve big problems.
What is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? That you've brought this up several times, and I know it's an essential ingredient to the sort of stew of Acton.
Yeah. So very simply, it's neuroplasticity. It's the neuroscience.
Very simply, it's neuroplasticity.
Your brain.
Make it a little simpler than neuroplasticity for me.
Your brain is growing and changing all the time. And as you learn new things, your neurons actually change pathways. So you do not have a little part of your brain for math that is either big or small, good or bad. You can practice that part of your learning and get good at math. This is how we teach growth mindset to 6-year-olds. So we hang rubber bands on our fingers. They're little, some are big, some are tight, some are fat. And we talk about, this is your brain. Now, some of the rubber bands are really easy to spread like this. That could be like, for you, it could be filmmaking. Something that's easy, you do it, you're good at it. You might have worked really hard, but it comes naturally. A tiny band is something that doesn't come easily. You have to stretch that. You really have to get that rubber band going. You have to really stretch it.
Going to the gym on a regular basis.
Yeah, honestly. So that's something, but if you keep doing it, that will grow. So the vision of the rubber bands really helps the young people understand that that's their brain. It's plastic. It can grow and stretch. And the things that feel really hard to you right when you want to quit, you can remember you just have to work harder and it's going to stretch. You're going to grow. So they know they can keep growing and keep learning. And that was really good for me. I grew up with a fixed mindset. I just wanted to get good grades. I was afraid when I would start to struggle, I would say, I'm terrible at that. I'll never be good at that. And it was like the higher math or, all of that. I just thought I'm terrible at it. Now I'm like, you know what? I want to go take those math courses because now I know I can learn anything. I'm not going to go do that. But the idea is I'm excited about life because I can learn anything. That's a funny thing about this Acton model. It's not just for the children. We have seen the parents become transformed by it because the excitement around learning and doing filters back home. I've had several parents say, my kid is on a hero's journey. I want a hero's journey. And they go off and do really interesting things. It's really transformative for the parents when they start thinking of their child's individual passions and their individual genius, not what they wish their child would turn out to be. There's a great story, one of the Acton dads, I love him to death. He loved sports, big baseball player, grew up when his son was really young, coaching t-ball, all the baseball teams. Yeah. They came to Acton and we did a play. So the children wrote the play, produced the play, sold the concessions, wrote the program, did the whole thing for this play, and it was on this historical stage in downtown Austin. After that experience, the child went to this dad and said, Dad, I actually don't like baseball. I want to act. And the dad came to me and said, he's crushed. His heart is broken because his whole future is now different. He really pictured himself going to baseball games. That's what was his future for his child, was the two of them doing baseball together. And then he said, but then I realized it's his journey. It's not my journey. So the dad started taking acting classes and started doing fun acting things together. They ended up making a film. The son morphed into filmmaking, and the dad got so in because he wanted to be with his son, just followed the curiosity that way. And they ended up making a major motion film together.
We went to see the movie. This is the
Yes.
Carpenters.
Yes. And so it's an amazing thing and that's the teachability, but for the parents too.
Yeah.
Follow the curiosity and your life gets so much better too. I think we become afraid and we think our children have to learn this, this, and this, or they're going to have terrible lives, or they won't get into college. When really, if they can just learn how to learn and learn what they love to do, that's a really good life.
The thing that is so interesting is that what you're talking about, I think to somebody listening, all I think makes like plain common sense. And yet the result of applying that basic, set of ideas is a radically different school than what we see. What have been the challenges of being that different?
The trial for us, and this continues to be really, really difficult, is because exactly what you said. Who wouldn't want that for their child? Who wouldn't want their child to love learning, have these hands-on experiences? So you think you want it, but the truth is there's some boundaries set on the Acton experience that are really hard, mostly for the parents. So it's a contract-bound studio. The children write the rules, they sign a contract. If you break the contract over a series of processes, basically timeouts that grow into longer timeouts from the community, you get asked to leave. So there's standards of excellence, and we don't fix the problems for the children. So that's when it gets hard and messy and ugly, because it's not utopia. People do struggle. Learning is hard, and we ask the parents to let the struggle happen and not to step in and solve the problems. That's really uncomfortable for parents. So at the very beginning of this journey, I was just excited anyone wanted to hear the story. There was a total of only 5 families that first year. It was just really brave parents saying, yes, we'll give it a try. We don't know what this is, but we trust you and Jeff, and we're along for the ride.
Were these people, I imagine that these were people that you knew.
Yes.
So you say, we trust Laura with our kids.
Yes.
That's not a thing that happens through an application process on a website.
Right. So that early on, that's what really got us grounded, was those founding families trusting us and trusting their children. That was the most important. These were unique parents. As it grew, though, it just sounded like it was too good to be true. These children are so happy at school. That's what we want. But it's a tough journey. The hero's journey includes trials and tribulations, and we let the children solve their problems, like I said. And that's when most parents get uncomfortable. And we've had parents simply leave because they would, it's much more comfortable to have a teacher tell them what to expect, how their child is doing. For example, we don't say how your child is doing. We show you the evidence, and then you can figure it out. There's lots of data points. All those online programs have all the data you would possibly want about math, reading, or writing. But parents become afraid when it's something really different. So that was something I learned, to understand that this is not for everyone. This is for parents who naturally understand failure is good. Parents, a lot of the mindset is around entrepreneurial thinking, so that working hard is good, ambiguity is good. Now, this is not things that are normal things people are comfortable with. This is an uncomfortable journey. Let me just put it out there. It's an uncomfortable journey, and the most joyful journey at the same time. But for parents, that's a really hard pill to swallow when their child hasn't done math for 3 months and you let that happen. We say, yes, we let that happen. They're reading a lot, and they'll catch up on their math. We're not concerned about that, but we let those plateaus in learning happen, those paces that sometimes are really slow for parents to happen. Over time, the pace of learning is fast. So we don't believe in standardized tests, but we do give them just for its interesting data. And the first time we did that, I was just like, oh, let's not look at these. Who knows what's going on here?
We've got our crazy school.
We've got our crazy school. Our kids are happy, but let's see. And
they're feral.
They're feral.
It's working.
Well, they had, over 9 months, they progressed 2.5 grade levels on average. And that continues to happen. And what we have figured out is there is a rigor that is required to stay at an Acton in general. And children, when they're given the choice, to do the work, to plan their day and to set their own goals, they actually work a lot faster in general than schools that are set up to go lockstep with a certain age. A 6-year-old can be really great at reading and slow at math, but those things even out. But that's what was really fascinating to me, is that the learning goes so fast. We were done with elementary school math. We're like, now what are we going to do? They maxed out the test, but there's so much more to do. So
Right.
parents stopped worrying about the test. That doesn't really matter. But the misconception is that the children are just hanging off the trees over there at that Acton. There's, they're just playing and having fun. The truth is there's a rigor and a standard of excellence that we are bound by. And that was another thing, circling back to the very beginning. We knew contracts were important and standards of excellence were critical. And those are the things that bind the community together.
Let's focus in on this notion of contracts and actually on the governance of the classroom by the students. I had this experience. I brought Mateo to Acton. What's that experience going to be like for him or for any kid entering the school? How are they going to know what they can and can't do? What's going to guide them
Yeah.
on the week-by-week basis?
Right. So the first 5 weeks of every school year is called Build the Tribe. And it's a series of challenges that all the students work through together to write their contract. To become accepted to an Acton, you have to agree to the hero's journey. So there's some pre-work involved, understanding that I am a hero on a journey. I'm going to be courageous and say yes. I will get up when I fall down, and I will help the people around me. So there's that coming into it. You have said yes to those things already. So the painted picture of the hero's journey, and that you are special and have something really important to give the world. And this system is going to help you do that. So the system is, let's write the rules together that will help protect the sacred nature of the idea that we each have to learn our gifts and do something important. So that means I won't distract others when it's silent work time. I won't hurt anybody. I will participate in taking care of the environment. They have to clean up. We don't have janitors, for example. They do all the cleaning, all the maintaining.
Yeah.
When we say no adults, we're talking not even a staff, not even an administrative staff.
How many adults are on the main campus?
So there are 3 adults on the main campus, and that's verging on too many.
So I want to repeat this. This is a K through 12 school, and there are 3 adults, and you think that maybe can we get it down to 2?
Okay, so Jeff would say 1. I'll say 2. Because someone may get sick. But this is the idea, and you can picture this as a dad. Think how capable a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, and 18, these young people who are in our high school run the campus. So what happens is, in a mixed age classroom, they're teaching each other, they're serving each other, they actually earn servant leadership badges in order to progress through the levels. So by the time you're through middle school, you've been holding the young people younger than you accountable all the time. You've been the one who's the true leader of that. Those, we call them studios instead of classrooms. Those high schoolers, they literally could run any organization I've ever worked for. They are so highly capable. That's been the most shocking thing, I think. They know from computer programming to putting everything on an Excel spreadsheet, things that I really need their help on. They completely run the program. The adults are game makers. The adults are the ones who write the Socratic launches, those questions we talked about, and make sure the incentives are set so that the projects are really intriguing and have high standards of excellence. So the guides really are game makers. The young people run the show. Of course, there's bottom line safety issues that are in place. But frankly, those young teenagers, I would hire them to do any job I can think of.
I'm reminded of, I think it was an episode of This American Life. This is a classic example of why like a show like that is such great storytelling. They were looking at aircraft carriers and trying to find the storytelling angle into how to understand an aircraft carrier. And what they realized was the average age of an aircraft carrier staff member is 19 years old. So I think about like, this is a nuclear powered massive war machine, and the median age is a high school senior. So of course, if the military leaves our aircraft carriers to 19-year-olds to run out in the, Pacific Ocean, why can't a school be run effectively by the high schoolers?
We do such a disservice to young people by not giving them big jobs, big responsibilities. They can handle them and they thrive with them. So that's one thing that I think is really important, that we're pushing the envelope even more. We didn't know what learner-driven really meant when we started. We knew the Socratic method, Maria Montessori, and online learning. This idea that students really can govern an organization has really taken on hold strongly now that we have campuses around the country and around the world doing the same thing we're doing. It doesn't matter the culture. It doesn't matter the community's size. There's 270 Actons in 25 countries, and they're all based on the same model. And in each one, the older students run the show. And we're pushing that to more extremes as we move forward, because we've seen that it's completely 100% possible and actually makes them grow faster and go farther than if they weren't given big responsibility. And now we have something called the Sheepdog Forum, where these young people around the world have a Google forum together, and they bring up their campus's problems and ask for advice. And so the young people are seeking advice, not from adults, from other Acton students around the world, and boom, 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 those answers come in. And we always are amazed. We think, gosh, we should ask the kids questions about problems all the time because they have great solutions, and they refine our systems. We overcomplicate systems. They bring it back to the essence and do a much better job of that. So I'm more and more excited about the potential of what these young people can do just by watching them manage a school. I mean, that's like, I loved your military example. I mean, they should be running a lot more. I think our world would be better off if we just listened to the young people.
You know, we have this tribe building experience. They write this contract to govern their lives in the studio. Is there a template they start with? How do they come up with the rules?
Yeah, they use the very first year with those 7 students, they started from scratch. Each year since then, they take the last year's contract and decide how they want to change it, edit things out. So they do have a template, which is wonderful. They build into that the processes for what happens when you cross a line, because everyone crosses the line. I mean, and so they've built in a layer of an economy where you can earn Eagle bucks for working hard without distracting people, and points are earned, and those earn you bucks. You can take a buck away from someone if they're distracting you. You can buy things in the Eagle buck. So it's a mini civil society is what they're really creating. What's empowering, though, is that they're broken down into leadership groups. So they have squads and running partners, and that's for support during the core skills time. So if you have a question, if you're stuck on something, you don't go to the guide in the room, you go to your squad leader or to your running partner.
So my son or daughter is at school. They've gone through this process where they've gotten to vote on the rules of the road.
Yeah.
And now, how do they come to be in a squad? Are they assigned?
Yes.
Who does the assignment?
So there's a leadership group, the older Eagles, and this all happens before the year starts. They're invited to a pizza party, you know, the 5th grade or the 5th years, and they divide the group up into squads. Once that's done initially, each 5 to 6 weeks, those squads are changed. It's like a football draft. The leaders get to draft the people they want on their squads. And what's great about that is they don't want their friends. They want people who won't distract them. It's a really interesting thing to watch. So they're in charge of setting their squads, and they're in charge of voting on a council. And so they have a council that manages all of the complications that arise. They also once a week have a town hall meeting, and that's where if you have a grievance or if there's a problem in the community, all week long there's a box, a town hall box. You write your grievance, you stick it in the box, and then one of the council leaders facilitates the meeting. And the adult does not sit in that meeting. It's totally learner driven, and they vote, they approve, disapprove, change rules, and truly solve their community problems. That's been the most powerful thing for me, because when we first started the first couple of years, the guide said there's no way they can facilitate town hall meetings. You have to have an adult do that, because they're dealing with a lot of, it just needs to be an adult. We stopped having an adult do that, and they got better. And they care about their community. That's an interesting thing. The culture, that tribe building quest that I talked about at the beginning of the school year builds a culture that is about excellence, and it's about staying on the journey, and it's about helping each other. So there's this whole culture around being at an Acton that is very intentionally built week by week. So those town halls hold that culture together, and that's a once a week. That's every Friday morning. The first thing they do is have a town hall meeting. And I've been really impressed at how young people can solve societal problems. This is their society.
Yeah.
And their problems may be less intense than ours. Like, for example, people not cleaning up after lunch, and it really makes them so angry. But they figure out a way to...
There's an OCD over-indexing of Acton students, maybe?
There was an issue they brought up that people were burning their microwave popcorn. And once you burn popcorn, it smells just terrible. It ruined the whole day. So they came up with this elaborate system of, if you bring popcorn, you have to sign up, get approved, and this whole thing about bringing popcorn. Because the guide came to me and said, can't you just make an announcement at home that no more popcorn can come to school because it's such a mess, it's such a pain. We said, let's just leave it to them to figure out what to do. And that's a minor example of a problem solved, but also how our instinct as adults is just make an announcement to the parents, make a rule, stop this nonsense, but the children can take over, and then they own the experience. And that's the whole thing we wanted, is for our children to own it. They own it.
Talk to me about freedom levels, because one of the parts of the process is like the Eagle Bucks and the rules and the opportunities to be a leader and a council. One of the rewards / punishments is this freedom levels. So what are freedom levels? How do you achieve them? What inspired them?
Freedom levels were inspired in our first middle school. We did not start that until 5 years into having an act and this idea of freedom levels. And it was because things just went really straight to hell. And there was so much chaos.
We tried chaos, and chaos is what we got.
Yeah, and chaos happens for sure, but this is where there needs to be something where the people who want to work. So got, once again, the council together, and what can we do? And they came up with the idea that you have to earn your freedoms, and you earn your freedoms by how much intentional work you do during your core skills time. So a chunk of time in the morning is your core skills work, and as you work, you earn points. If you earn a certain amount of points every week, that means you're working hard, you're getting your work done, you can gain more freedoms. So that's what the freedom levels are. So it's to keep people who are working hard able to do things like, you can listen to music if you're in freedom level 3. You can work anywhere you want if you're in freedom level 3, on a beanbag, outside. If you're in freedom level 1, you're still learning how to focus and how to discipline your time and how not to distract people. So you have to stay at your desk, and you don't have that many freedoms. That's pretty inspiring when you see your friends listening to their favorite music and getting work done and sitting outside. So that's a way to help grow those motivations to work hard and get things done. So that's really how freedom levels started. We made the mistake of moving that system down to elementary school too soon. And we realized elementary schools should be really free of a lot of complicated systems. They learn to work, they learn to get along, and they learn to just pursue their passions, and it doesn't need to be so systematic. So freedom levels are really for middle school and Launchpad, and they get really, as you move up through Launchpad, you're really, a lot of the time, by the time you're a senior, you're out really working in the world. You come to school very little because you're really working hard on your passion. The assumption, and this ethos is in the elementary studio, that freedom is earned. And Lord Acton is who we named Acton Academy after. He was a Victorian scholar who studied freedom and virtue. And can a free society also be a virtuous society? His most famous quote was, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely."
Yes.
The young people experience this. It's a really interesting thing to watch play out. So they have to hold each other accountable. But they have learned that freedom means doing what you ought. That's another thing that Lord Acton said, not what you get to do. So you earn your freedoms. It's to do the right thing, not whatever you want. And they hold each other accountable to use freedom well. But we really believe that freedom should be highly valued. And that's one of our underlying principles.
What is the King George experiment?
So we realized that teaching history would be more fun experientially. So we have done a lot of interesting experiences, from the Socrates trial to, we did some discrimination experiences, the brown-eyed, blue eyes experience. The King George experience was when we started taking away their freedoms. We had the guide dressed as a messenger of the king and came to the door and started writing down rules, making them sit at desks in rows and putting their books on a corner and having snacks only at a certain time. They're free to have snacks when they
King George
choose.
comes from the local public school to impose his will upon them.
Well, at first they thought it was kind of fun. It was funny. She was dressed up and it was funny. They kind of played school.
And what age is this?
Elementary school. So
Elementary
these
school.
were 6 to 9 year olds.
Okay.
And after the second day, this was not fun anymore. They started to get very angry, saying, "This is not Acton. You're treating us like animals." I mean, they got really, it became extreme. And we knew that would happen. And so we were just waiting. It didn't take very long, which was interesting.
Technically, we're treating you like cannon fodder, which is what the thing was all designed to do. But yes,
Yes. Miss Kaylee, the guide, said, "Well, if you have grievances, you're welcome to write a Declaration of Independence and send it to the king and revolt." Now, if you do this, though, there's a risk. And so it became kind of a risk probability thing about they can write the Declaration of Independence and decide they want to revolt. And if they decide to do that, they're going to roll a dice. If it's a 1 or a 2, they win. They're free. All those restrictions come off and it's back to being Acton. If they roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6, the rules continue for the next 6 weeks. And so it's risky, and we did not stage it for it to work out. So I was really scared. I thought, this is going to be really bad if we have to go back to school for the rest of this session. They put Charlie in charge. Charlie's my son. Charlie in charge of rolling the dice, and I couldn't watch. I left the room. He rolled it, and it was a 2. And they all screamed, and they ripped off the proclamations from the wall, and they were so excited. And I thought, they're just going to run out and play. They're free. They said, "Nope, now we get to work. Now we get to choose our work." So some of them disappeared onto the beanbags with their books. Some of them took their laptops and started going back. They just wanted the freedom to choose their work again. So then we could have those discussions around, what does it feel like when people take your freedoms away? And how risky was it for those early people to claim their freedom back? And so then it makes those discussions much more real. So that's just an example of making learning emotional and real for their worlds. And that really makes it go deeper. And they're very capable of experiencing those tough emotions. Some of the parents were afraid. We would have to say, there might be tears at home tonight, and there will definitely be anger, but just hold tight with us. We will process it. And I think that's one of the more important things is through any emotional experience, there's tons of reflection time and processing time that the group does together. So they really learn how to talk through their feelings and help each other out and share their stories of pain and suffering, which in their worlds, they really do experience pain and suffering, but they talk about it. And I think that the processing and reflecting is really important.
You mentioned the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment, and you talk about it in the book. Lay that out for me, because this is another experiential exercise.
Jane Elliott was a teacher in Iowa, and this was after MLK was assassinated. And she just knew there was no way this group of white kids in Iowa could really understand what discrimination was, and they'd read about it and talked about it. So she decided to do this experiment where she divided the group by the color of their eyes, blue eyes or brown eyes. And she started with the blue eyes, and she said that the blue eyes are the smart people. And the blue eyes are the ones who are therefore going to get all the benefits. They'll get the good, as many servings of lunch as they want. So and collars went around the brown-eyed children, so you could see them from a distance and know who they were. So that was the experiment, and she quickly saw how cruel the young children could become in this game. And then the next day or the next couple of days, she switched, and the brown eyes were the smart ones. And to see what would happen, same thing. They just digressed into cruel young people.
And became tribal.
And became tribal. A lot of the parents revolted, saying that our white children shouldn't have to do this even for 2 days. Black children had been experiencing that for their lives, but white children couldn't. But the experience was really profound, and she brought those children back together, and that experience to the end of their lives really impacted them and taught them what it felt like to be discriminated against. So we decided to do that at Acton. We divided up the children into brown, played it out exactly like that, except it was orange bands around their arms. And we told them that our scenario was, first day, brown-eyed they're the heroes. And because Acton Academy is built on building up the heroes who will solve the problems of the world, we're going to invest all of our cold water, the laptop battery, the desserts, and the free time, because they need to move their bodies, on the blue-eyed children. The brown-eyeds have to sit in their desk, and they don't get refills on water, and they don't get dessert. And they will have a minimized free time, and they don't get to use the laptops. Well, they knew it was a game, same thing. They started out kind of fun, but it was incredible how quickly it became a tribal, cruel environment where the blue eyes they were loving those cookies, eating them in front of just saying how much fun free time was. We realized we needed to cut it a little short and switch the bands. So we switched the bands. It was Charlie, once again, he's a little bit of a loud mouth, sorry, Charlie, said, I think Jesus had brown eyes. I refute the report that said this. We need to do research and look at the heroes and look at the colors of their eyes. This cannot be right. So Kaylee was smart. She goes, they're questioning the report we read them saying this. So she went back and said, we got it wrong. It's really the brown eyes are the heroes. So let's just move the bands. You get the water, the desserts, the more free time. We thought we could do this for 2 days. We couldn't make it last because it became so painful for the students how they started treating each other. So we sat down. There were tears. We processed it. And it was really profound because they realized how being judged by a physical attribute is so unfair and so unhealthy, and how quickly and terribly it makes you feel just like a smaller human being. And it was poignant for me in many ways. My other son, Sam, was a very shy and anxious, he was a 6-year-old at the time, and I had not heard him participate much in the Socratic discussions. This discussion, though, he opened up and he just said, and we just did this for a day. Picture if you did this for your whole life. You would just want to die. So the parents were wonderful on that one. They really were excited for their children to understand what it meant to be discriminated against. So we had their support. But that was another emotional experience. But they circle back to that frequently, like they'll never forget that experience.
I want to touch on a couple other real basics and then talk about the future.
Okay.
So grades.
Yes.
I put my kid in an Acton. How do I know that they're learning?
Yeah, there's two ways that we decided to replace report cards. One, as I've mentioned, those online programs give so much data to parents, and they're all mastery based. So rather than just getting 80% of a particular math concept, you can't progress ahead until you master it, till you get 100%. That's really important if you're going to end up doing math, even at the algebra level or the geometry level, to have mastery of the early math concepts. But that's in everything, progressing through this quizzes and the tests that are given on these online programs. So that's one thing, parents, there's a ton of data there, and you can see, and the children know exactly where they are, and those are adaptive. So the program works just to where your skill and ability, your level, and then you move at your own pace. So that's a self-paced way to measure progress. Now, we also decided public exhibitions are probably the best way to prove what you learn. The idea is show what you can do. So we have public exhibitions every 5 to 6 weeks. Parents and community members are invited to attend, and that's where the students exhibit what they've learned. So they have to make a speech. They have to demonstrate that their electricity project works. Very often those have a competitive element. They have to bake things based on the chemistry equations they've been given. So showing publicly what you can do, you're either going to fail or you're going to succeed. You're going to do well or you're going to feel not so great about how you did. The idea is that you're always continually improving. And we think that's much more powerful than a letter grade delivered by a different person. We also think that parents are highly capable of seeing how their child is doing. Acton students write probably more than any school I've ever seen in terms of the quantity of writing. They write a lot every day, every week, every year. So there's a collection of work, those portfolios of work that they take with them, and you can see the progression through their skills and crafts as storytellers and writers. And those are become profoundly good at the high school level. And the things like grammar and spelling, those are all done through the online learning programs, and they just kind of tick-tock through learning those skills. But it's public exhibition showing what you can do. portfolios of work and the metrics of the online programs. And those we translate into traditional transcripts. So the children who go on to college, you can translate that into basically it's A or F. Frankly, if you master something, it's an A. And we have all the work that's collected through our information management system, basically, that proves all their grades. So the work is so high level by the time they're applying to go to college that those grades are backed up so clearly that they can prove any badge that's earned. That the work is there and is proven.
And what is the badge? What does the badge? How do you?
So,
what is a
right.
badge? How do you, as a student, earn a badge?
Right. A badge is a collection of work accomplished over a long period of time. So it's a series of challenges that are delivered to you that you must accomplish and get feedback along the way before you move to the next one. So we have reading badges, writing badges, civilization badges. So it's like a course in traditional language. A history course would be a civilization badge. So it's just a stamp of completion that you did all the work at an excellent level.
The thing that was most interesting to me, the proof in the pudding that got me so excited about Acton, was that Mateo, my son, wasn't some exceptional student coming into the school. One of the things that activated him was how many points he would be earning by the end of the week.
Yeah.
So what is that? What are the points? How do the kids earn points?
We have a variety of incentives built into the system because not everyone works on, internal motivation, intrinsic motivation, just wanting to work for the pleasure of working. Some people are really motivated by external things like earning points. So we have a pyramid of intentionality, and you earn points for the committed time you spend on math, reading, and writing during certain times of day. If you complete those, you get a nice amount of points. And that accumulates at the end of the week. And that actually determines your freedom levels. But it's based on you can't move forward in a freedom level until you've earned a certain number of points. So they're very aware of points because it gives them more freedom. It also just proves that they are learning the skill of focus and hard work because they don't get the points unless they've finished a certain quantity of work during that time. And so it's really just a way of noting how hard you've worked. Some kids care about them and some people don't. I mean, so it's really interesting, and that's why we mix the incentives throughout the experience. So they get a lot of satisfaction from some of the just recognition they get. Character call-outs or just verbal character call-outs at the end of every week. That can be very motivating for some of them. Just getting elected to a position as a champion can be very motivating, and some just want the points and they want the ego bucks, and that's great too. So it's just an incentive system.
The thing that's so neat about it is, whether this was intentional or not, it mirrors what they experience in the world of gaming, because I think at this point probably the majority of kids are gamers. Earning badges is like part and parcel with the gaming mindset. And I know a lot of these things come with like a lot of psychology work.
Absolutely.
Some of it comes out of like Las Vegas. Like you earn the badge and there's a bell that rings and it just so happens it sounds exactly like the bells on a slot machine. But was it that intentional? Were you drawing on the gaming world? Like where did you come up with the badge idea?
Yes. So it's a gamified way to structure learning. And so you get rewarded as you progress. And that's why we call guides game makers, because you're really designing a game that keeps them hooked, and there's a way to win, and there's rewards along the way. All in all, what a guide is doing is looking around the room, analyzing the energy levels, and wondering, how can you make this game of learning more fun? And that really is what we're doing as guides all the time. If learning can be fun, why not, And children want to be with each other. So if you're having fun with your friends and you're learning something that's really cool, that's joy. I mean, that's a total blast. And that's what makes them want to come back the next day.
One of the things that I've heard Mateo talk about is servant leadership. What is the servant leader badge?
So the servant leader badge is pretty much what it sounds like. You're learning to serve others. So you can serve as a reading buddy to an elementary school student. You can serve as a writing buddy. You can be a discussion leader. You can be a squad leader. There's different leadership opportunities. And the idea is that you're really learning how to serve and to lead. We believe in the idea of servant leadership, leading from behind being the most powerful way to lead people. And so the young people learn very quickly that the way they can progress is by helping others. And in the youngest years, we call them learning to be badges. So they have more opportunity to learn to facilitate a conflict resolution, for example. They sit and they learn how to guide two people who are arguing to come to a resolution. They learn to be the judge of studio maintenance. So they're given the opportunity to make sure everyone's done their job, and they have to hold someone accountable if they didn't. So it's just learning to be a leader in general. As they get older, middle school and high school, it's real servant leadership. That's why we can have so few adults, because those eagles are coming and really serving in the role that an adult would usually be serving. It's powerful because those youngest eagles, those elementary eagles, would do anything for those high schoolers who come in. They adore them, they love them, they listen to them. Same thing with the middle schoolers. They love those peers. They feel so honored when they're sitting with them. And I think that it goes both ways. I think that feeds the older eagles too, to be adored and loved by the younger ones. And they have to hold their own behavior at a higher standard because everyone's looking at them. Here's just a simple example: romance at an Acton Academy. The first couple that kind of coupled off, it was upper middle school, right when we were starting our high school. And it was a girl who every boy had a crush on, and the boy who's her best friend wanted to go out with. And they became a couple. And it could potentially be really damaging to the
scary moment.
It was a scary moment. We had never, we knew this would happen at some point. And I've talked to my friends who are principals at high schools, and I've heard the stories. And I was like, this is pretty significant. Jeff was the guide at that time. And he sat down with them and he said, so you all are setting up what it's going to look like to be at a couple from now on, because you're the first ones and you're servant leaders. What do you want this to look like to everybody else? And can you write a contract for it? And what they decided was no public display of affection. We won't sit alone with each other because that's excluding other people, like at lunch or during work time. And if we break up, we won't bring it to this. We'll leave it all at home. And they verbalized those promises to their peers. And they are still together. They're a beautiful couple, graduated. They're just wonderful humans. I respect and admire them. Because they set the standard of that behavior, we never have to worry about them setting low standards for themselves. They set really high standards. And it's even things like, we've had a drug and alcohol problem, and that person was asked to leave because the other Eagles had signed a contract. We have a no tolerance for that. And they think that's really important. So it wasn't an adult having to come in. They basically, the contract was broken in a serious way, and that person was asked to leave. So this is not utopia. I always want to repeat that. There's no utopia when it comes to children and learning and families in school. I think learning's hard, and being a parent is really hard. But I think we diminish the idea of what young people can do if we don't give them the opportunity to really get out of their way, basically.
So the kids are bound by contracts that they create. But at Acton, the parents are also bound by contracts. So tell me about the contracts a parent must agree to in order for their kid to go to an Acton.
Yes. So we are a covenant-bound community on lots of levels. For the parents, we ask that they agree that they are on a hero's journey also, that they read their Eagles, their students' learning badge plan so that they understand what the badge plan is, and that most importantly, that they will not email a guide or a staff person, intervene in anything without asking permission of their child first, and then to bring the child into the conversation. The idea, once again, is to protect the young people's learning experience as sacred, where even the parents aren't intervening. And if the parent does have concerns or questions, which happen all the time, that the young person is brought into the conversation. So we would never have a meeting about a child without the child sitting there. And the idea is, we're not going to come between you and your child. That's between you and your child. We'll sit and facilitate a conversation. If you have questions about why they're not working or social problem they're having, we are happy to facilitate that conversation, but we're not going to fix it for the child or for you. It's just, once again, the ideal of pushing power to young people, and also for the parents to understand that they can trust their child to do important things like solve their own problems. But it is hard for parents because it's so much easier to pick up the phone ask the guide, could you just tell me what's going on? And we just say, would love to, but you need to talk to your child first. After a couple of times of that response being given, a parent stops doing that kind of communication and finds out that they can do that around the dinner table at home, most likely. And so we do have journey meetings where the parents are invited in and to sit with the guide and talk through the work with their child with them. And the exhibitions are another chance for the parents to be a part of the conversation. But in general, we really try to hold sacred the studio, and the studio experience is for the young people.
It seems like at Acton's, you really try to draw a clear boundary about what it is that we as Acton are here to do and what it is that you as a family have to deal with. That's not really our business. Am I getting that right? Because school gets intertwined with everything.
Right.
How do you navigate that?
Once again, it's just about pushing power to the families, pushing power to the children and to the families. And that's one of the reasons we don't have homework, for example, because you've been at school all day. Go play, go hang out with your family. Many children bring work home that they want to finish or continue on with, but it's just by choice. We think the family's in charge of the time after school. We don't have, some Actons do have some more extracurricular, some after school programs, but that's just Acton to Acton. Each one is run independently and separately. At our Acton, I had, 1.5 hour free play after school for parents who worked, and they would just, pay an extra $10 or something. But frankly, we really want families to take charge of their lives. If their child's in elite sports, there's a lot of club sports you can play. We do have some sports team, basketball, for example, flag football, that we compete in different associations. But in general, we just think families are in charge of being a family, and we're a really stripped down school. That's one of the reasons we can bring tuition down to really show that it doesn't cost a lot to have this private learning experience.
There are high-performing Americans who would say muscling through homework is part of what you learn how to do, is how to work hard and really do your homework. How did you arrive at having no homework? And why is that a good idea?
Well, they work really hard during the day, for one thing. So that's one thing that may be different. I'm not sure, but they get a lot of work done during the day, and there's so much else to do in life. I don't think muscling through worksheets at home is a valuable use of one's time management, or I don't even think that teaches a good work ethic when you could be doing an art project or building a go-kart or doing a part-time job in the neighborhood. There's a lot of things you can do. Reading great books. My sons, I don't think we've ever had a weekend or a vacation where they weren't doing their Acton work. They take their laptops home and they do their math, and they always wanted to read their deep books at home. So there was work being done at home purely by choice. I just think there's a lot to learn in life, and I don't think doing boring homework that someone tells you to do is a great use of a child's time. I also think choosing to work is of great value.
College. There is a culture at least Acton, Maine, the main campus, where I have the blessing of sending Teo to the school that you and Jeff started. And now there's you said 270 around the world? College is not expected as a given at Acton. But in the rest of American culture, it's like everything is oriented around how are you going to get into a brand name college. You've taken a very different approach philosophically. Why, and what is the relationship between Acton and the college experience?
College is one option. The whole high school experience at Acton is built on figuring out what your next great adventure is. Once again, it gets down to the why. My son's an engineer, for example, needs to go to college for his degree, but mainly he knows he'll get great internships, and that's where his life of meaning will come, in his internships for his next great adventure. We have high school students, college would be a hindrance to them. They're out making movies and coding for tech companies now. They don't need to go to college. It literally is of no interest to them whatsoever, and it's not even something they're considering. Trade school's a great option for some kids. We just think college is one option. I think if you know your why and you do the hard work to figure out why you want to go and which college will serve you, there's value to that. For a lot of people, it's a waste of time and money, and also doesn't answer the question, doesn't guarantee a job, and doesn't help you figure out who you are. I think what we have seen with our sons, both got accepted to great engineering colleges. The biggest value they have found is a great community of peers. And their Acton experience was very beneficial in that they have the great skill of building friendships and having fulfilling small groups. And they have found that, and that's great. Jeff and I have wondered, how can we, if someone didn't want to college, build in the social scene that college gives young people is a value, or that's what a lot of people are seeking. And that's the only thing otherwise we don't see the value it adds, and it's really expensive for families. I think the veil has been lifted a little bit, and I think there's more open-mindedness around the college experience, at least than there was 10 years ago. So like I said, for some people it's a great option. That's what our sons are doing. At the same time, I wish it was just a 2-year experience and not a 4-year. It seems like a really long time to be doing that. We've had some kids take a travel year, some go straight into work, some enter a trade school, and some go to college. And some become entrepreneurs, start their own business. What I love about the people who choose Acton, it's not for parents who really want the prestige of a fine school and that's what they're working towards. We just say, just go to a different school because we're not a prep school for that. But if your child wants to go to college, that works. I mean, our program works and prepares them well. But what I love is the whole high school experience opens up the minds of the young people where they don't feel that they're doing something wrong if they choose not to go to college. It's as worthy to go start a job or as worthy to go to trade school than to go to a Vanderbilt or a college station, Texas A&M or something. So the options are just so vast and so wide. We're just blessed to be around parents who feel the same way. There's a lot of parents that's too scary for still.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so that's fine. And so we're just not a great program if your main goal is just to get into college, because we see college as a stepping stone, as a tool for something much bigger, and that's, a purpose.
Selfishly, I actually want to understand this for Matteo. You're creating this transcript for college, and you said it's basically pass-fail, so it's either all A's or F's. How should I be prepared as a parent for what colleges will think when they see the Acton transcript?
Well, the transcript itself, the level of work we built into each biology class for the quests that they do is much more work than a traditional high school class offers, just because we feel like we have to prove ourselves way beyond the boundaries of what a public school education is, so that it's extremely valid. We would never sign off on it unless they really had done the work. The one problem we can't solve is still most colleges make you take the SAT or ACT, their basic IQ tests. So that determines a lot, frankly, and that's unfortunate. Every child who has gone through the Launchpad and has applied to go to college has gotten into the colleges they've wanted to get into. Sadly, a lot of it just has to do with the test scores. So there you go. I mean, there's no magic to that. The transcript backs up a traditional piece of work, and it's created it so that any college advisor can read the work, see what it is, and understand how it translates. So it's really simple, frankly. But if Matteo does the work, he'll have a really solid transcript. And the nice thing, and was one thing that's really appealing that we have found, number one, Acton students are so good in interviews. If they can meet in person and have an interview, that's huge, because they're so well spoken and they engage well with adults. And secondly, their apprenticeships, the experience level they have is unique and solid. And those two things, I think, are a brilliant kind of jigsaw puzzle to put together beyond just a test score and a transcript. That has been exciting. But the parents have to do a lot of the work to make sure they're going to go through the application. We don't have a college advisor, for example. Now, the graduates who have done the college experience have written a report for the young people coming up to read, so they know, lessons learned. Don't do this, do this. There's an
FAQ.
Yes, but he'll have to do the work, and it's not fun, it's hard. The path has been paved by these young people before him, and he needs to just run the program.
If I am a parent and I've watched this interview and I'm like, this sounds like it could be a really good fit for me, what do I do?
Yeah, I really love to send people to the website, because there's videos, there's links to the blogs that really share details of what a day in the life looks like, what the quests are, what the college experience feels like for people who have gone to Acton. There's lots of pictures and books to read. We built it to answer as many questions as possible, and then let it go. And if the idea continues to haunt you and it sounds good, then maybe you're an Acton parent. I say that only because it is so non-traditional even though it's rigorous and classical in many ways with apprenticeships and lots of reading and writing, it's uncomfortable for parents if they want something really traditional. So that's why I try to undersell it. We don't want people running away from something. We want someone running to a hero's journey, someone running to the idea that their child is a genius and deserves to find a calling, rather than just, I'm not happy with my school, I'm really sick of it. So that's why I try to undersell it a little bit. But the website's built to make things happen. That's actonacademy.org.
Talk to me about what's happening with the future. There's 270 schools around the world now. There's like some astounding number that have people that have like applied to start schools. Who will build the future of the Acton network?
Right. Basically, parents who are entrepreneurs are the basic makeup of the people who are applying to open their own Acton. They're called micro schools, and Acton occupies about 2/3 of the micro schools across the country. And these are parents who just want to build something for their families and their community. We have an online funnel, a process, just like applying to go to the school. On that website, there's a button you can click if you're interested in starting your own. And the first step is really simple. You answer a few questions, and as you go through the funnel, questions are answered and you can decide if it's something you want to do or not. But really, it's parents who are entrepreneurs who love the idea of the Socratic method, the hero's journey, and setting their children free to find their calling. And we have, I think, 8,000 applications in the funnel right now.
This is 8,000 applications by individuals who want to start
an Acton.
Wow.
And this is around the world. So we're in 25 countries. And I love it because you could look at the one in Pakistan and the one in Southern California, and what they're doing each day looks and feels so much the same, that it goes across cultures and across socioeconomic situations. There's just something about the human spirit that's drawn to setting children free to work hard and make hard decisions and learn how to learn so that they can be free in this world that we don't really know what it's going to look like. And one thing we learned from COVID, even though we shut down the funnel because we just didn't want people saying, well, it's all online now. Our school's online anyway. Let's just go be an Acton. It sounds more fun. We learned that we will never have just an online school because the community of people is the fundamental piece of Acton that makes it magical, that you have to bump elbows and experience that human relationship to really understand what it means to learn how to learn and to learn how to be and to learn how to do. And that's essentially what an Acton is.
You touched on something that is really interesting and unique, I think, in a lot of ways over the past 2 years. Mateo's been in school pretty much the entire time. Yeah. I was struck by something which to some people might seem outrageous and to others might seem like a breath of fresh air. And that is, his school did not have a mask requirement. The mask requirement that ended up being put into effect for the launch pad for his class, the children decided on for themselves.
Yeah.
So talk to me about navigating the past 2 years with COVID, running a school.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to speak for any other Acton because as you know with COVID, each community had its own situation, and we left it up to the owners of each Acton to make their own policies around COVID. Some shut down completely, went totally virtual. Some did a hybrid. Some required masks. Some didn't. It really was very localized. So I'm not speaking for anyone but our own personal situation. What was interesting, it basically was a test and a lesson for us. We decided one night we needed to close and just send an email out. And we were able, because everything we have available to us is through a dashboard that the children can access and they have their laptops at home. We just turned on a dime and started the next morning at 8:30, but on Zoom with our launches ready. The children know what work they do, whether they're at home or in the studio. They were able to keep up with their core skills work absolutely no problem. We didn't miss a beat because that was easy for us. But what we did have to do is figure out how to make it fun, get them outside, have project supplies delivered to their home so they can be building and doing things, do team building and games on Zoom so that they could get some sort of experience of being together. We found out they were self-organizing over Google Meets just to hang out with friends while they were doing their schoolwork because they love each other, they love being together. So while we were able to function, it was not ideal in terms of learning at all. So I feel for a school, that's just a mess. We didn't have a gigantic system to work through. You know, we have 100 people and they're broken down into 3 studios. So it was much more manageable than what some of these other people are dealing with around the world. So I have great empathy for the confusion and the hardship that COVID caused so many people. But we were able to kind of rock and roll through it the best we could.
This was in the April, May of 2020.
Yes.
But come September,
We opened back up.
Yes.
And I was the guide, and we left it to the parents to choose. You can continue being at home if that's best for you, or you can come to the studio. We can't guarantee your safety. No one can guarantee.
No.
So that was something we just put out there. We'll do the best we can, but we can't promise you everyone's going to be clean from COVID because it's been a mysterious thing. And so we had 2/3 of the families come back and a third stayed home. And that was just a family choice. So it was tough. And I think everyone did the best they could. We did learn that we want to be together. We want to be in person and we won't do it any other way. The parents were wonderful. They celebrated the discussions. Some of them sat in on them. They learned a lot about Acton because they could see it working.
Yeah.
And I think that that was a beautiful thing. But we learned that we love human community. We love the messiness and the chaos of it. And we will never go fully virtual as a result of that.
As a mom, as a parent, as an education leader, how do you think about your role, your hero's journey, if you will, in the American story?
I'm a lucky vessel. I feel like I happened to be there at a time that an opportunity was given, and I take no credit except I said yes to the journey, and I was able to be there. But the children and the parents who joined us, I think they're the heroes that made it happen. Otherwise, it would have been a cute family story, and we would have done it anyway. But honestly, I think it's the people who said, yeah, we're willing, let's do it together. I literally was just a vessel for that, so kind of a nothing. As much as I love heroes, I think in this particular story, it's the young people, and it's the parents like you, frankly, who said, let's do this.
You know, we call this channel Dad Saves America for a reason, because I believe that these choices we make with our kids are the most important thing we can do for the country, not just for our families. How do you think about what you're doing for the country? And because it's a big part of Acton. You come in and the freedom levels, the inspiration of the founding principles, they're baked into the cake of Acton Academy.
An Acton dad who's one of my...
They're called Eagles.
Yes. An Acton dad who's one of my favorite heroes who actually took this idea and spread it to Guatemala City. He said what's happening is a reseeding of civilization. Reseeding, like planting seeds to get civilization to grow again, to be a free society where people use their capabilities to solve problems, work hard, and set people free, and believe in the values of family and hard work, and frankly, responsibility and kindness. And I think that this little bitty school model with courageous parents taking the torch and gathering around the dinner table, I think that those basic ideals for an American experience are coming back. I think the path that I'm taking now is helping support families just have dinner conversations. And so I think that that's one thing that Acton brings to the table. Having fully functioning families, it's the most important thing, I think, for our society. And I think there's been a loss, and I think dads are central to that. And I'm so excited for the projects that we're creating just to help build support for families so they can do that. When they're very busy people, they can still have those great bonding moments with their children that will help set their children free.
Thank you for taking the time with me today, Laura. And thank you for creating an environment for my son to flourish, because we wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for Acton Academy. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us. It's been so fun.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Laura Sandifer. Be sure to check out Laura's book, Courage to Grow. We'll post a link in the description below. I'll admit it, I am a super fan of Acton Academy. My wife and I chose it for our son. Honestly, if I didn't love producing videos like this, I'd probably want to start an Acton myself. And if you've been inspired by what you heard today, I encourage you to check it out for your kids. and even consider starting a school in your community if there isn't one already. We need more options in this country for our kids that don't cost a fortune, yet deliver a great education. That's one of the most powerful things about the Acton model. It not only encourages our kids to own their education, but the schools offer an incredibly low-cost, low-overhead approach with the potential to reach millions of kids. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. At Dad Saves America, we believe that dads are heroes that play an essential role in the challenges we all face together. And as usual, we like to leave you with a dad doing something awesome.